Hey you guys. Now I know what you're thinking. None of the people in this video's thumbnail are Gen Xers. And yes, you are so very right. But this series isn't about the people in the shows. It's about the people watching the shows. And that, my friends, was an audience filled with Gen Xers. Hi, I'm Natalie, and this is my so-called Gen X life. Welcome to part 3 in my series, You Don't Remember These TV Shows Unless You're Gen X. Have I changed the name of this series a few times? Yes, I have. Do all the thumbnails look completely different? Also, yes. The good news is there's a playlist on my channel that has all of these videos together in one place, so you can watch them all. And I want to give a special shout out to my new channel members for choosing this video as the next one in the series. If you want to become a member, click the join button on my channel, and you'll get 2 levels to choose from. Jamming on the one costs 99 cents, and you'll get special badges, emojis, and participation in polls for channel content. I've got 5 on it is a level that costs $4.99 a month, and you get the badges, emojis, and poll participation. Plus, you get additional perks like priority response in the comments, special behind-the-scenes posts, early access to videos, member-only live streams, and discounts on merch when I get the merch store up and running here shortly. So yes, check out the channel memberships and join my Cool Kids Club. I wonder if I could somehow get members-only jackets as merch for channel memberships. I need to look into that. Okay, let's get into it. Episode 3, TV shows you probably don't remember. Yes, I said probably. I don't want the boomers and millennials to come at me in the comments. So this is TV shows you probably don't remember unless you're Gen X. The 70's Kids Edition.
As the sun rises each day in the awesome world of the 3 networks, their generals sent forth the stars to do battle for the ratings that rule the realm. The battle is fierce, but the treasures are precious. But today, the battle is physical. And
Y'all been asking for this one in the comments, so I had to start off with Battle of the Network Stars. This show made its debut on November 13th, 1976, and it was an athletic competition between the primetime stars of the 3 big networks of the time, ABC, CBS, and NBC. This was a special that popped up about twice a year, usually during sweeps weeks in May or November, or May and November, I should say, and the show got huge ratings for years. Yes, the idea of turning actors into athletes for a semi-annual TV special was presented to viewers with a bit of a wink and a smile, as the AV Club pointed out in its oral history of the show. It was treated at first as being a bit absurd until the stars started taking it seriously. The show is hosted by legendary sportscaster Howard Cosell, and it took place at the sports facilities of Pepperdine University near Malibu, California. Huge 70s TV stars from each network like Farrah Fawcett, Gabe Kaplan, Suzanne Summers, Jimmy Walker, Lou Ferrigno, Joyce DeWitt, Greg Evigan, all of these big stars, they competed in different sporting events like the tug of war and an obstacle course. Each network was represented by around 10 of its stars from various series, and then one person from each team was elected as the network's team captain. Executive producer Bill Garnett said that it wasn't hard to get competitors, and the networks were cooperative because it was great exposure for the various TV shows that the stars were a part of. Each star received $10,000 just for showing up, because that was the prize for each member of the third place team. Second place teams, each member scored $15,000. And on first place, those team members got $20,000. That was a substantial amount of money in the late 70s and early 80s. The final competition of Battle of the Network Stars aired in December of 1988.
Still no major edge, a slight edge perhaps for CBS. And now Ferrigno is becoming the dominant force. And CBS is gaining, and ABC is close to the end of the struggle. Past the flag, and CBS has won the tug-of-war as Ferrigno falls back onto the sand. The utter fatigue overwhelming him, but CBS has won the tug-of-war, and CBS has won the Battle of the Network Stars.
He ain't got no walking stick, he don't need no ball and chain. If he ain't got no can to kick, that don't mean nothing to James. Whoa, James singing, whoa, James. The people in the street, oh, the pouring of the rain.
James in 15 only ran for 1 season, but it still managed to stir up plenty of controversy not only with viewers but with NBC itself. While the series would go on to inspire a new generation of more mature teen shows, James at 15 was mostly ahead of its time. The storyline of James losing his virginity led to the show losing the support of viewers and his own network, which resulted in its cancellation. Dan Wakefield, a novelist and journalist who worked as a contributing editor to The Atlantic, was initially tasked to write the series by 20th Century Fox's Vice President of Television Programming, David Sontag. He researched the project by sitting in on high school classes in Boston and focused on the kinds of social struggles that teenagers of the late 1970s in America were experiencing. There were, of course, the typical things like cliques, academic expectations, and sports, but there were also issues that were normally topics that popped up in after school specials, like drugs, booze, and sex. Wakefield ultimately decided to center the teen drama around 15-year-old James Hunter, whose father was a college professor and his mother a homemaker. He had two sisters, he competed on the swim team, had a passion for photography, and the family lived a charmed life in Oregon. But everything changed for James in the series' 2-hour movie pilot, which aired on September 5th, 1977. It set the table for the series to follow, as his father took a new job in Boston, turning James's life upside down. Not only was there the culture shock of moving across the country, but he also had to deal with the angst of being transported 3,000 miles away from his girlfriend Lacey, played by Little House on the Prairie star Melissa Sue Anderson. James at 15 was technically a show about a boomer kid, or really one who was part of Generation Jones. But as TV networks were figuring out at the time, kids like to watch shows about kids who are older than they are, which meant that 10 to 12-year-olds were watching shows with teenagers, and James losing his virginity on his 16th birthday just didn't go over well with anyone at the time. So the series was canceled in May of 1978 after just 21 episodes.
HR Pufnstuf. Who's your friend when things get rough? HR Pufnstuf. Can't do a little 'cause you can't do enough.
Once upon a summertime, just a dream from yesterday, a boy and his magic golden flute heard a boat from off the bay.
Come and play with me, Jimmy, come and play with me, and I will take you on a trip far across the sea.
No, this is not a fever dream. This is the first TV show from Sid and Marty Krofft, known as HR Pufnstuf, which initially ran for just 17 episodes on Saturday mornings in 1969, but then it continued into 1971 via reruns. Shot on a soundstage at Paramount Studios, HR Pufnstuf had a premise that focused on a young English boy named Jimmy and his magical golden talking flute named Freddie. This is ridiculous. Okay, so Jimmy takes a ride on a talking boat. But there's this old witch named Witchy Poo who wants Freddie for herself. And Jimmy falls into a trap set up by Witchy Poo, and then he washes up on the shores of the magical Living Island. So everything on Living Island is alive, and Jimmy ends up being rescued by Mayor Pufnstuf, who is a talking friendly dragon, and his rescue racer crew Cling and Clang. Witchy Poo tries everything to steal Freddie, with the help of a talking vulture named Orson and a spider named Seymour. But Pufnstuf protects Jimmy and Freddie with the help of Dr. Blinky, a wise old owl, and Judy the Frog. There was also the Four Winds. This is the one thing that I remember the most. The Four Winds, which had 4 different faces for the different directions. The North Wind's face was frozen like Jack Frost. The South Wind was a country girl. The East Wind had an Asian face, and the West Wind was a cowboy face. There were so many more characters and magical plot points that often centered around Witchy Poo's schemes to steal Freddie, but yes, I'm just here to confirm that this show did actually exist, and it wasn't a collective Gen X nightmare.
Hey, you guys! Moving out in a new way. Moving out in a new way. We're gonna turn it on. We're gonna bring in the power. We're gonna light the darkest nights like the brightest day in a whole new way. We're gonna turn it on.
The Electric Company from the Children's Television Workshop was a PBS series that ran for 6 seasons between 1971 and 1977. Then it continued via reruns until 1985. Produced at Reeves Teletape Studios in Manhattan, The Electric Company was aimed at elementary school kids who had grown out of Sesame Street, and the goal was to help develop grammar and reading skills, and they used things like sketch comedy to do it. The original cast of the Electric Company were more established performers that had done stage and improv work, and they included names like Morgan Freeman, Rita Moreno, and Bill Cosby. The show had a number of different sketches, many of which were extremely memorable. But when I tell you that I unlocked a memory when making this video, holy crap, it was stuck deep in the brain because this show was done before I was born and the reruns were off the air by the time I was 7. So, anyways, the memory that was unlocked was when I came across a sketch called Soft Shoe Silhouettes. It had two people in silhouette, with one making the first sound of a word and the other making the sound of the rest of the word. And then the two people said the word together in unison. I swear this sketch was one of the reasons why I have such good grammar to this day. Love me some phonics. Anyways, there was also Spider Super Stories, making the Electric Company the first TV show to feature Spider-Man. He always spoke in speech balloons and never appeared as Peter Parker, but we're going to talk more about Spidey later in this video. There was also Letterman, a cartoon about a flying superhero in a varsity sweater and football helmet. His nemesis was the evil magician Spellbinder, who hated words and hated people who used them. The segments featured the voice talents of people like Gene Wilder and Joan Rivers.
What is that villain, the Spellbinder, up to now?
What a beautiful day.
Look at that light.
Good morning, Ms. Jones.
How are you?
He has taken the L from light, and by adding an N, has changed light to night.
Boy, that was a quick day.
What is this?
Hey, watch it. Out.
Excuse me. Excuse me.
Hey, look where you're going.
Time to get up yet?
Gosh, this is terrible. Will the world have to live in eternal night? What will happen to sunflowers and their seeds? Will we have to have owls for pets? Oh, where's Letterman? Is he in the dark with the rest of us? Ouch!
Excuse me. Watch it.
Here he comes now. Faster than a rolling O. Stronger than silent E. Able to leap capital T in a single bound. It's a word. It's a plan. It's Letterman.
I'm Letterman.
He flies to the heart of the night and, tearing the L from his varsity jersey, covers up the N in night, making it light once again.
Who are you?
Who are you?
Where am I? What is this?
Seriously, this show was just so good. And you know what? As I'm sitting here talking about it, I just realized that the soft shoe silhouette bit was done on Family Guy like a million years ago. An image of Peter Griffin just popped into my head. Sometimes I really wonder how my brain works. I may need some help.
Because if I blow this, I'm going to have to go back to my old job at the electric company.
Duh.
At. Dot.
Buh.
Et.
Bet.
Bet. I knew that. Slow it down.
Huh.
It.
Pit.
Pit. Come on, pal. It's my first day. At.
Fat.
Oh, that's it, buddy.
Since Spider-Man has just been mentioned, I have to bring up the short-lived show The Amazing Spider-Man, which ran on CBS for 2 seasons and a total of 13 episodes from the fall of 1977 to the summer of 1979. In the mid-70s, Spider-Man's co-creator Stan Lee sold the rights to CBS to produce a primetime series, and the show made its debut via a backdoor pilot as a 90-minute movie simply titled Spider-Man, and it featured university student Peter Parker getting bitten by a radioactive spider, which gave him powers, and then he got a job with the Daily Bugle. The lead role went to Friedrich from The Sound of Music, whose name is actually Nicholas Hammond, but his stunts were performed by stunt coordinator Fred Waugh, I think is how you pronounce it. Yes, I know I have issues with pronouncing names. I think it's Fred Waugh. Anyways, even though the comic was set in New York, the show was actually filmed in Los Angeles, but producer Daniel R. Goodman and Stan Lee were on the same page from the beginning about the direction the show would take. The pilot scored strong ratings with young kids, but the network wasn't happy with the numbers in the adult 18 to 49 demographic. So CBS only gave it a 5-episode order for the first season, and those episodes aired in April and May of 1978. The numbers were once again strong with the kids, but the show still underperformed with adults. Season 2 only featured 7 episodes that did not air consistently, and CBS ended up canceling the show soon after. Apparently, they didn't want to become the superhero network, considering they had The Incredible Hulk and Wonder Woman on their schedule at the same time, and Captain America and Doctor Strange had just ended their runs. Yes, kids, Marvel was a thing on TV in the 70s. I know it's crazy. Hammond revealed in 2002 that there was a plan in 1984 for a reunion film where the Spider-Man cast would team up with the cast from The Incredible Hulk, with Bill Bixby directing, and Hammond was supposed to appear in the Spider-Man black costume. But Hammond says the project fell through because Lou Ferrigno wasn't available. But in his autobiography, Ferrigno says that he never heard anything about the project, so I guess we'll never know the true reason why the reunion crossover never happened.
Come and meet the letter people. Come and visit the family. Words are made of letter people. A, B, C, D, follow me.
From 1974 to 1976, The Letter People aired on PBS and other educational stations across the United States, and it was all about learning to read. Along with the popular school reading program, the Letter People TV show took place in Letter People Land, and episodes would introduce new letter people and sounds by combining two letter people together. Basically, it was puppet phonics. I love the catching game show that the letter people played where they had to put themselves in the right position side by side to form words. Even though there were only 60 episodes filmed in the mid 70s, the show continued to air via reruns on PBS for years, up until 1996 when the program was revised. Rumor has it that PBS was ordered to destroy the master tapes of the original episodes to make way for the newer programs because the original characters depicted, quote, negative imagery. I couldn't verify if that was true, but the episodes were saved thanks to the 5-part VHS set of Learning Advantage videos that was part of the Letter People curriculum in the early 90s. There's also recordings from TV that exist and have been preserved thanks to sites like YouTube. The Hardy Boys' Nancy Drew Mysteries ran from January of 1977 to January of 1979, and it starred Parker Stevenson and Sean Cassidy as amateur detective brothers Frank and Joe Hardy, alongside Pamela Sue Martin as amateur sleuth Nancy Drew. In season 1, this show alternated between episodes that featured the Hardy Boys and then episodes that featured Drew, and then as the series progressed, the two storylines would cross over. Since I was born during the run of this series, I only know it from reruns, but from what I understand, the stars of the Hardy Boys were some of the biggest teen idols of the 70s, and their faces were plastered on the best bedroom walls of preteens and teens all over America. Many Gen X kids like myself actually first met the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew through their respective book series, which were both extremely popular. But the TV show had its share of struggles. Martin was replaced in season 2 by Janet Louise Johnson, and the Nancy Drew character was drastically reduced. And then in season 3, they just dropped the character altogether and retitled the show The Hardy Boys. ABC then abruptly canceled the series in January of '79 in an attempt to put the show or put a different show in the time slot that would score better ratings. But the move didn't work, and the network ended up with what Stevenson called cancellation remorse. Whew, had to let that one play for a bit. Y'all know I love me some theme songs. Anyway, The White Shadow was an ensemble drama starring Ken Howard that ran on CBS from 1978 to 1981. Howard played Ken Reeves, a white former pro basketball player who takes a job in the pilot episode as a coach of a racially mixed basketball team at an urban high school located in the Los Angeles ghetto. The concept of the show was based on Howard's real-life experiences as a star high school player at Manhasset High School on Long Island. He was one of the only white kids on the team and the only one in the starting lineup, which earned him the nickname the White Shadow. Howard said there was almost no racial tension during his time in school, but they did sometimes encounter it when they played at other locations. White Shadow was a groundbreaking series, which had a mostly African American cast. And even though the basketball coach was white, the school principal and the vice principal were both black, and the majority of the players on the team were black. The White Shadow wasn't just a sports drama either, even though they strove for realism in the basketball scenes. It constantly dealt with controversial topics like STDs, drugs, crime. There was a kid struggling with his sexual orientation, but it also had a lot of comedy in it, which Howard says was based on his really funny teammates from high school and at Amherst College. Howard actually pitched the show to CBS along with Bruce Paltrow, and the network wanted it to be a half-hour sitcom at first. But in order to avoid becoming Welcome Back Kotter and to get the chance to deal with realistic, controversial material, Paltrow and Howard persuaded CBS to let them make The White Shadow a one-hour drama. The White Shadow was not a huge hit for CBS, but it did pave the way for realistic dramas on TV, and it did have quite an influence on Gen X, with many sports journalists like Bill Simmons naming the show as one of their favorites when they were kids and teens.
They call me Mad Jack, and if there's anybody in these mountains that knows the real story of James Adams, that'd be me. Now, my friend Adams was accused of a crime he didn't commit, so he escaped into the mountains, leaving behind the only life that he ever knew. Long about then, he come upon a grizzly bear cub, all alone and helpless. Now, Adams knew that little critter couldn't survive without his help, so he started right down that cliff, risking his own life to save it. Now, that cub took to Adams right off. As he growed, he became the best friend Adams ever had, and together they became a legend.
Well, I guess I really don't need to say much more. Denver Pyle just explained this series pretty well. Based on the 1974 film of the same name, The Life and Times of Grizzly Adams was an NBC series that debuted as a mid-season replacement in February of 1977, and then it ran through the spring of 78 before getting canceled. It starred Dan Haggerty as farmer John Adams, an innocent fugitive from the law who lives in the wilderness with a grizzly bear as a companion. The series was set in the 1850s when Adams was accused of a crime he did not commit, and he was forced to flee into the mountains. As he starts his new life of solitude, Adams rescues and cares for an abandoned grizzly bear cub who grows up to become his bestie named Ben. John then becomes Grizzly Adams, a man with an uncanny link to the wildlife and who makes a life for himself in the wilderness and tries to protect it from unnecessary harm. He has two human friends named Mad Jack, an old trader played by Pyle, and a Native American named Nakoma. Grizzly also has to worry about bounty hunters because he does have a price on his head. The Life and Times of Grizzly Adams was shot in northern Utah with production based in Park City, and this show actually put Park City on the map in the film industry and was influential to Robert Redford, who established his Sundance Film Festival there after the series ended. To wrap up the saga of Grizzly Adams after the series cancellation, NBC actually aired a made-for-TV movie in February of 1982.
This is Jim Rockford. At the tone, leave your name and message. I'll get back to you.
Jim, it's Shirley at the cleaners. You know that brown jacket? The one I said looked so great on you? Your favorite? We lost it.
The Rockford Files was all about ex-convict turned private investigator Jim Rockford, played by the incredible James Garner, who would much rather run away instead of fight, and who preferred to go fishing instead of do any kind of work. But he wasn't a coward, and he wasn't lazy. He was just cautious. Nothing ever came easy for Rockford. Even when he worked hard, it usually led to him getting beat up or shot. Rockford was actually falsely convicted of a crime that he didn't commit, so he often used his prison connections to help him solve crimes. For 6 seasons, Rockford worked cases with the help of his friends, police detective Dennis Becker, his former cellie Evelyn Angel Martin, and his lawyer Beth Davenport. Even though he was good at what he did and was quite observant and astute, a common gag in the show was that Rockford could never remember a suspect's license plate just moments after seeing it. Another one of my favorite gags from the show was from the opening credits, where there was a different message left on the answering machine every week. Usually the message had something to do with the upcoming story, and they were voiced by actors on the show. Rockford Files ran on NBC from 1974 to 1980, and I must say this show was insanely funny, and it totally holds up 50 years later. If you are up for a rewatch of Rockford Files, it's streaming for free over on Sling TV as of the making of this video. As a Xennial or Xennial, however you say it, a Carter baby, an Oregon Trail kid, whatever you want to call me, as a person born in 1977, I have to say that I had a major thing for Chips growing up. This show actually premiered on NBC 2 months before I was born in September of 77, but by the time it ended in May of 83, I promise you, it had a big 5-year-old fan. Good thing it continued to run in syndication throughout the rest of the 80s. That gave me the chance to watch all 139 episodes. Chips was an action crime drama about the California Highway Patrol, specifically two officers named John Baker and Frank Poncherello, played by Larry Wilcox and Eric Estrada, respectively. And you guys, let me tell you, after doing some research on this show, it's going to get its own video at some point, because there was some serious drama behind the scenes. Apparently, Wilcox and Estrada did not always get along, and in season 5, Wilcox had a falling out with the show's producers because he thought they were favoring Estrada. At the time, Estrada had gone on strike over syndication profits, and he missed out on filming 3 episodes, so they had to bring in Bruce Jenner as a temporary replacement officer named Steve McLeish, or McLeish. I don't really remember the exact how you pronounce it. But anyways, after Estrada returned, Wilcox decided to leave the show, and he missed out on the final season. He was replaced by Tom Riley, who played Officer Bobby Nelson. Okay, so yeah, lots of drama there. Anyways, so as far as how they made the show, they did actually shoot on the Los Angeles freeways, ones that had been recently completed but were not yet open to the public, and they also filmed on side roads around the Los Angeles area. Chips was a mix of drama and light comedy, and it was a favorite of 70s and 80s kids growing up. And yes, I know boomers and millennials loved it too. I just had to mention it because it was so much fun, and Gen X, it was a big one for us 70s and 80s kids. And I do know it was turned into a movie in 2017 starring Dax Shepard and Michael Pena, but for me, it just didn't have the same charm of the TV show. But yeah, Chips, loved it. A spin-off of the 1976 film of the same name, Logan's Run, the television series, aired on CBS from September of 77 to February of 78. Yes, it was a short 14-episode run, but it was still quite memorable for Gen X kids in the 70s, according to the comments section of a few of my previous videos. Logan's Run starred Gregory Harrison as Logan 5 and Heather Menzies as Jessica 6, and it followed those characters as they escaped from the city of Jones so they could avoid death once they reached the age of 30. The plot of the series differed from the movie in a few ways, showing Logan and Jessica on the run in each episode as they search for the mythical sanctuary, with the assistance of an android called Rem. They traveled through a post-apocalyptic America in a solar craft, which was basically a hovercraft that they found in an abandoned building. On their journey, they encounter things like strange human societies, robots, and aliens.
In the year 1987, NASA launched the last of America's deep space probes. Aboard this compact starship, a lone astronaut, Captain William Buck Rogers, was to experience cosmic forces beyond all comprehension. Ranger 3 was blown out of its planned trajectory into an orbit 1,000 times more vast. An orbit which was to return Buck Rogers to Earth 500 years later.
Buck Rogers in the 25th Century ran on NBC for 2 seasons from September of 79 to April of 1981. It was set in the future of 1987 when NASA astronaut William Buck Rogers is caught in a freak accident in deep space, causing his space shuttle Ranger 3 to be blown into an orbit that returns him to Earth over 500 years later. In 2491, when Buck wakes up from the freezing, Earth is recovering from a nuclear war and is coming under hostile attack by the Draconian Empire. The Buck Rogers series actually began as a made-for-TV movie that was released theatrically in March of 79, known as Buck Rogers in the 25th Century. Because it was such a success at the box office, grossing $21 million in North America, Universal greenlit a weekly series. It starred Gil Gerard in the titular role, Aaron Gray as Colonel Wilma Deering, Tim O'Connor as Elias Hewer, and the legendary Mel Blanc, or Mel Blanc. Is it Blanc? It's probably Blanc, as the voice of Tweaky, with the physical performance coming from Felix Silla. The first season featured 24 episodes and was popular with TV viewers, but not necessarily with critics, and not with star Gil Gerard. He wanted better storytelling and a lot less of the tongue-in-cheek tone. Apparently, there were times that he refused to perform some of the comedy in the scripts that he was given. He complained that Buck was just a wise ass, making one joke after another, and he later confessed that he wanted the series to be canceled after the first season. The tone did get more serious in season 2, and the show was retooled to be more like Star Trek and Battlestar Galactica. The first season was based on Earth, but in season 2, Buck was assigned aboard the Searcher, a starship that was exploring the unknown reaches of space while searching for former Earth colonies that were scattered across the galaxy. The primary villains in the first season, the Draconians, are never seen in season 2, and neither is Buck's friend and mentor, Dr. Elias Ewer. Instead, they added Hawk, a Mr. Spock-like character played by Tom Christopher as Buck's sidekick. But Gerard still wasn't happy despite all the changes. With the 1980s actor strike delaying production, combined with a troublesome star, NBC decided to cancel Buck Rogers after just 11 episodes in season 2. There was no finale produced for the series, and the final episode was broadcast as just a normal standalone episode like any other.
"O my queen," said the royal sorcerer to Hatshepsut, "with this amulet, you and your descendants are endowed by the goddess Isis with the powers of the animals and the elements." 3,000 years later, a young science teacher dug up this lost treasure and found she was heir to the secrets of Isis. And so, unknown to even her closest friends, Rick Mason and Rennie Carroll, she became a dual person. Andrea Thomas, teacher.
Almighty Isis.
And Isis, dedicated foe.
70s television loved its superheroes and comic books, and one of Gen X's favorites on Saturday mornings in the 70s was Isis, also known as The Secrets of Isis, when it went into syndication. This was the very first live-action series to air weekly in the United States that featured a female superhero as the lead, beating out two other ladies that I will be talking about here in just a minute by a few months. The series focused on a normal school teacher named Andrea Thomas, played by Joanna Cameron, who had the alter ego of Isis, an Egyptian goddess, after she found an ancient mystical gold amulet during an archaeological dig. Using the Tutmos amulet, Andrea would transform into Isis when she was up against a crisis that a simple human couldn't handle. Using the powers of the animals and the elements, Isis would save the day in each episode. Usually, that meant coming to the rescue of high school students who found themselves in danger due to their unwise choices. So I must confess, I get super confused when it comes to Marvel and DC Comics, especially back in the 70s. Isis also had a companion series at the time called Shazam, and they had crossover episodes. But there was a character in it called Captain Marvel, and I'm so confused because I thought these were DC shows. Anyways, if you can make sense of that, please let me know in the comments. So, Secrets of Isis was short-lived. It only lasted for 2 seasons and just 22 episodes, but it was really good. So was Shazam. I really like these shows. It's a lot of fun.
He looks good in this on. Roger. ACS arm switch is on. Okay, Victor. Landing rocket arm switch is on. Here comes the throttle. Circuit breakers in. We have separation. Inboard and outboard, they're on. We're coming forward with the side stick. Oh, looks good. Roger. Tom, I can't hold it. She's breaking up. She's breaking.
Steve Austin, astronaut. Gentlemen, we can rebuild him. We have the technology. Better, stronger, faster.
From 1974 to 1978, The $6 Million Man, starring Lee Majors as Steve Austin, ran on ABC. For 5 seasons, this sci-fi action-adventure crime drama was on the screens of 70s kids everywhere, and it was so awesome that it spawned the spin-off The Bionic Woman. But first things first. The $6 Million Man was a made-for-TV movie based on a 1972 book from Martin Caidin called Cyborg that aired in 1973, and it followed Major Steve Austin, a NASA astronaut who was severely injured when an experimental aircraft crashes. So they had to rebuild him because they had the technology in an operation that would cost $6 million, just like the opening theme explains. His right arm, left eye, and both legs were replaced with bionic implants that made him better, stronger, and faster. He could run at speeds over 60 miles per hour, and his eye had a 20-to-1 zoom lens with infrared capabilities. And of course, bionic limbs meant super strength. With his new expensive bionicness, Steve became a secret agent for the OSI, or the Office of Scientific Intelligence. The movie was so successful that it was followed up by 2 more, which aired in October and November of 1973, and then the $6 Million Man series premiered in January of 1974. This series was insanely popular for its time as well, using slow-motion action sequences and electronic sound effects to communicate Steve's powers to the audience. But seriously, who can forget the opening sequence? In 1975, the network decided that Steve needed a lady, so they aired the 2-part episode titled The Bionic Woman, written by Kenneth Johnson. Yes, the Kenneth Johnson, which introduced the audience to pro tennis player Jamie Summers, played by Lindsay Wagner. Jamie and Steve rekindle their romance when she shows back up in town, but she immediately has a parachuting accident, which leads to Steve demanding that she get rebuilt like he was. Jamie is given bionic parts like Steve, but her body rejects them and then she dies. But the character was so insanely popular that they decided to bring her back the next season. They explained that Jamie had been given an experimental cryogenic procedure that ended up saving her. Then they spun her off into her own series called The Bionic Woman. It ran until 1978 alongside The $6 Million Man, until both shows were simultaneously canceled. You guys, that was a good time. I talked about shows that I haven't thought about in years, and so many brought a smile to my face. What did you think? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget, if you enjoy content like this, like the video, subscribe, and maybe even become a channel member. I would love that. I'm on a mission to devour and curate as much 70s, 80s, and 90s content as I can, and I would love for you to come along for the ride. Okay, bye!